There were footprints in the snow, coming out of the forest, walking across the open field, through the gate, up to the back door of the house. And then they stopped. No prints leading away, no tracks going back into the trees. Whoever walked out of that forest that morning walked into that house and never came out. Andreas searched every room, every cupboard, every corner of every barn. Nothing. No one. Just the prints in the snow and a silence that felt less like emptiness and more like something holding its breath. That was March of 1922. 6 people lived in that house. Within days, none of them were alive. But the house stayed very much occupied. This is the final knock, and this is the case that has no explanation, no suspect, no ending. Hinterkaifeck, a small farmstead swallowed by the Bavarian woods of Germany. The trees around it grew so thick, they killed the afternoon sun before it ever reached the ground. By nightfall, the darkness there wasn't just dark. It was heavy, like something pressing down from above. Andreas Gruber was 63, a hard man, calloused hands, a jaw that had never learned to show fear. He had worked that land for decades. He knew every sound the farm made, the specific creak of the barn door in cold wind, the way ice formed on the kitchen window before the fire got going in the morning, the precise groan of the third step on the staircase. He knew what belonged, and he knew when something didn't. It started with the keys, the heavy iron house keys he kept on his person at all times. Gone. Not misplaced. Gone. Then a newspaper appeared on the kitchen table, a paper no one in the house had ever bought, from a town none of them had recently visited. Sitting there, perfectly folded, as if someone had read it over breakfast and left it behind before anyone woke up. Andreas said nothing to his family. He didn't want to frighten them. But at night, when the house was quiet and the fire had burned down to orange coals, he lay in his bed and he listened. And he heard it. From the attic directly above him. Thump. 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 Not the house settling. Not the wind working through loose timber. Footsteps. The specific, deliberate weight of something that knew exactly where it was walking. Andreas took his lantern and climbed those narrow stairs. The cold got worse with every step. Not the cold of an unheated room. Something sharper. Wetter. Like the air itself had been pulled out and replaced with something from outside. He swung the lantern into every corner. Empty. Always empty. And every time he stepped back down into the hallway, the footsteps started again. Right above his head. Same pace, same weight. As if it had simply waited for him to come back down before continuing. Andreas told his neighbors. They laughed. An old man. Too much time alone in the winter. Too much silence playing tricks on a tired mind. But Andreas was not an imaginative man. And what settled over that farm in those final weeks was not imagination. Doors he had locked himself were standing open by morning, not forced, not broken. Simply open, as if someone had a key, the key that was missing. A smell had begun moving through the vents, not decay, not rot. Something older than that. Damp soil, dark water. The specific smell of earth that hasn't seen light in a very long time. It moved through the house at night when the wind was completely still, as if something was breathing it into the walls. He began to notice the gaps in the floorboards, the way the light from his lantern fell through them into the room below. He thought about how clearly you could see through those gaps if you were standing underneath. Looking up, he stopped walking over certain parts of the floor. He stopped standing in certain rooms after dark. He started sleeping with the lantern lit. And still, On the last night of March 1922, the farm went silent. No smoke from the chimney, no movement in the yard. The children stopped coming to school. The mail piled up untouched at the gate. The neighbors waited 3 days before they went to look. 3 days. Telling themselves it was probably nothing. It was always probably nothing. They were wrong. They found them in the barn. Andreas, his wife, their daughter, their eldest granddaughter, stacked, one on top of the other, covered with a layer of hay that had been placed with unsettling care, not thrown, laid, as if someone had taken their time, as if the arrangement mattered. Inside the house, the 2-year-old grandson was in his crib. The new maid, who had arrived just hours before the murders, was in her room. 6 people. Gone. The investigators noted that each family member had been called out to the barn separately, one by one, which means each of them walked in not knowing what had happened to the person before them. Each of them walked into the dark of that barn and didn't walk out. The wounds were not the work of panic, not rage, not frenzy. They were precise, patient, the work of something that was in absolutely no hurry at all. But none of that is what broke the investigators. What broke them was the timeline. The family was killed on a Friday, and the house did not go quiet until the following Tuesday. 4 days. 4 days of smoke rising from the chimney. 4 days of something living in that house, with the bodies in the barn. The neighbors saw the smoke every morning, rising slow and steady the way it always had when the family was alive. They assumed everything was fine. Inside that house, the cattle had been fed, the horses watered. The fire kept burning through 4 nights of freezing Bavarian winter. Meals had been cooked in that kitchen, bread broken at that table. Something had sat in Andreas's chair, eaten his food, slept in his bed, kept his fire alive, while his body lay cold and stacked in the barn outside. It did not rush. It did not panic. It lived that life the way you live a life you intend to keep. Comfortable, settled, at home. Think about what that tells you about what this was. It did not come to that farm to kill. Killing was simply the necessary step. What it came for was the warmth, the roof, the fire, the beds, the life that had already been built there. It came to move in, and it did. When the police finally arrived, the beds were still warm. The table was set for a meal that no one would ever eat. The fire was burning. The house felt lived in. And there was no one there. No fingerprints. No footprints leaving the property. No witness who had seen a single face. No suspect. No motive. No answer. Nothing. Just the warmth of a house that should have been cold. Over 100 investigators have studied this case in the century since it happened. Forensic scientists, criminal psychologists, cold case specialists with technology. Andreas Gruber could never have imagined. Nothing. Not one credible suspect has ever been named. Not one piece of physical evidence has ever pointed anywhere. The farmhouse was torn down. The land was cleared. People tried to bury it the way you bury something you cannot explain and cannot face. But the case never closed, because the question at the center of it was never answered. Not who, not why, but how. How does something enter a house in daylight, leave no evidence of entry, kill 6 people across an entire night, live in that house for 4 more days in plain sight of the neighbors, without a single person seeing a face, without a single person hearing a voice that didn't belong, without leaving a single footprint going back out? The prints in the snow only ever went one way, into the house. Never out. Which means, as far as the evidence is concerned, what walked into Hinterkaifeck in 1922 never left. The farmhouse is gone now, just an outline in the earth, a rectangle of dead ground where nothing grows the way it should. Hikers who pass through that part of Bavaria report the same things. A light between the trees, where no building stands, where no road runs, flickering, the way a fire flickers when someone opens a door and lets in the cold, and a sound, faint at first, then closer. Thump, 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 coming from underneath the roots and the frozen soil, as if something is still walking those same floorboards, still keeping to the same routine, the fire, the meal, the bed, 100 years later. And it has not stopped, because it was never passing through. It chose that farm the way you choose a home, deliberately, permanently. And when the family was gone and the house came down, it simply went back to the tree line and waited, the way it had always waited, patient, still, for the next warm light it could walk toward. Which brings me to something I need you to think about. Those footprints in the snow only went one way, but snow melts, tracks disappear. You would never know if something had been walking toward your home, night after night, getting closer. You would never know until the keys went missing. I want you to think about your home right now. Not a farmhouse in 1922. Your home, tonight. The doors you locked before you sat down to watch this. The rooms above you that you haven't checked in the last hour. When was the last time you heard something up there and told yourself it was just the house settling, just the wind, just the pipes? Andreas told himself the same thing, every single night, for weeks. He climbed those stairs with a lantern in his hand and found nothing, every single time, and came back down and heard it start again. The difference between Andreas and every person watching this is not the danger, it's the knowledge. Andreas did not know what was in his house until it was too late. You know what walked out of those woods. You know what it did with 4 days and a warm house. You know it never left. So check the attic. Check the rooms you haven't been in today. Check the locks you think you set. And if something feels slightly wrong tonight, if the air in a room feels colder than it should, if you hear something above you in the quiet, don't tell yourself it's nothing. Andreas told himself it was nothing. He was the last person to ever sleep in that house. Some doors you never stop hearing. Some knocks never end. This was the final knock. If this found you tonight, you already know what to do. Subscribe. Because next time, we go somewhere, the tracks only go one way. And something there is already inside.